17, the YMCA of the Rockies in Estes Park has hosted Mountaineering Weekend, featuring a variety of activities and educational sessions. Well, this year, the annual event will take place over the entire month of February with a theme of inclusion in the outdoors. Joining us now is Chelsea Murphy, an outdoor enthusiast, activist, and one of the keynote speakers for this year's event. So, Chelsea, thank you so much for being with us. I'm curious, where does your love for adventures in the outdoors come from?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me here. I would say that my love for adventure definitely started, same as my children, as a kid. You know, we grew up in San Diego and we spent a lot of times on the beach and camping every so often and just spending a lot of time in natural spaces. I did not grow up in rural America like I live now. I lived in the city. And so it looked a little bit different than the way that my kids are spending their outdoor nature time. It was less of a traditional hiking, backpacking type of style, rather than just being outdoors, roller skating, riding my bike, and getting together with my friends as a teenager and spending our time at the park and walking around and just being in nature.
Well, we're looking at some of your photos, and I know you've shared them on some of your social media pages. You have some incredible adventures. I'm definitely inspired by it, and it looks like your kids love the outdoors too, which is great. But also, you're on a mission to promote and encourage diversity in nature, saying the outdoors is a white space. Can you tell us more about what that term kind of means and what we can all do to change it?
Yeah, so for me, I think the best way to describe that is just understanding that where I live in Washington State, the demographic of who gets outside is very much predominantly white. And I just actually took a structural racism class that drove home that term white space. And it resonated with me because I grew up in a lot of those. My church, my school settings, my groups of friends. I think it's probably pretty easy to say that Washington is not very diverse. So I ended up in a lot of white spaces. And my husband actually grew up where I live right now in the middle of North Central Washington, deep in the mountains. And so we chose to live here and raise our babies here. But it, again, is a very white space, predominantly white. I think it's about 90% white. And then we have a little less than 10% Hispanic or Latino community, and then less than 1% Black, Asian. And so we are growing up in a very white space, predominantly white-centered activities. And so for me, the outdoors, when you're going hiking in Washington State and probably various other states in our country, it looks very similar. So you don't see a lot of people that look like me out hiking. You don't see a lot of people that look like me doing the traditional backpacking or water sports or anything like that. And so growing or living here, I wanted to change that. I wanted my kids to understand that people like us can do things in the outdoors. We can spend more time hiking and camping and exploring what it looks like to be in the backcountry and in our national forests and national parks. It's just really important to me, I think, mostly for my kids. I want them to understand that they belong and that is a natural space for all of us and all people to take advantage of.
Well, and I think that that's really powerful. And I know that part of your mission is also to inspire other Black Americans, especially mothers, to seek adventure. Why is that so important to you?
Yeah, so for me, being outdoors and being in connection with nature and God's creation is my favorite thing to do. I often say that I find my childlike love for and my laughter in the outdoors, and I think that should not be just exempt to certain people. I think that there should be equal access to the outdoors for all people, and I know that there are a ton of barriers to getting into nature, like financial, gear and education, and access as far as like actual transportation and getting there. Your proximity to nature changes when you're closer to nature and closer to the mountains like I am. I definitely understand that it's a huge privilege where we are and where we're living. I think for me, I understand that like my journey through postpartum would not have been the same had I not have had the access to the outdoors and my ability to just leave my house and 5 minutes later be at a trailhead. I think that it helped my postpartum journey tremendously. As a mother, I understand that though it's a real journey that you go on after having kids. That I mean, really being in nature, whether you're in the sun or in the rain and you're exploring a babbling brook, or you're going up a hillside with your kid on your back, it's just, there's something that happens that's really magical when you're out there. And for me, I just want that for everybody.
Absolutely. Nature is very healing. I always say that the mountains are my happy place. That is where I just go to escape and find my soul. So, you know, we're pretty fortunate here in Colorado to have so many wonderful places to do that and to explore. So finally for you, Chelsea, what advice do you have that could lead our communities to be a more inclusive and equitable space?
Yeah, so that's actually my main topic for when I present this next month at the YMCA, the Rockies. It's basically just 8 simple steps that the outdoor community and the industry and brands and nonprofit and organizations can it's tangible, right? Simple things that people can change to make it a more inclusive space, from you know, just kind of changing the narrative of what it means to be outdoorsy, and recreating a more inclusive space that might be more appealing for other people. And that might mean like representation in your mentorship, on your board, in your leadership. That might mean actually taking anti-racism education and classes. That might mean making room for a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant so that you can truly grasp what it means to be anti-racist and to be inclusive. Because I know a lot of spaces sometimes say like, we welcome all people, but like, what does that actually look like to do that? And so I think a lot of the time, you know, we want to welcome all people, but I think that there are things that we can be doing to do that. And a lot of the things that we've learned this last year, from the uprisings that happened over the summer to what we're seeing now with the transition of Biden and him welcoming so many people of color into his cabinet, you know, it really does take kind of a transformation of your leadership and your board members and your community to truly be inclusive. And I know for me, like a big part of what I do is just being a representation and a voice in this space. And I think if we give more people the tools and the power to tell their story and to take up space in the outdoors and in the communities that surround it, I think that we'll be a lot better off.
Absolutely. Chelsea, I can't thank you enough for sharing your mission and very important message with us. And besides hearing your keynote speech, we can also have folks register to be on a guided hike with Chelsea during Mountaineering Month. We've put more information on the YMCA of the Rockies event at cbsdenver.com. Chelsea, thanks again. We'll be right back.